but Canada has, in this weird way, these unique skill sets that really allow us to prosper. So I think in that regard, seeing this kind of blend of our, traditions with the king coming in, then of course, a showcase of some of our, maybe, unique, distinct cultural stylings or unique indigenous communities or unique indigenous peoples and the impact that they have was kind of this great mish together, showing that this is Canada. We are different. Maybe we are odd and bizarre, but there's no place else like this in the globe. So Donald Trump, back off. We don't have that many similarities with the Americans.
The King's speech from the throne today, there was no direct reference to Donald Trump in the end.
Yes, for no explicit reference to Donald Trump, although he was the boogeyman in the room, right? So many references to this, kind of strange new world that Canada and really the Western countries find themselves in, with Donald Trump disrupting and upending longstanding alliances, longstanding trade practices, and really this, underlining sentiment throughout the speech that, Canada is going to play a leadership role in whatever comes next, or wants to play a leadership role in whatever comes next, trying to rally like-minded allies. And we have to kind of proceed without the American leadership for the first time since the end of the Second World War.
How has it been received in Canada? Has it got the message that I suppose Mark Carney wanted the Canadians to receive?
I think it has. And I guess the caveat is it's been something he's been really insistent on saying ever since he became prime minister. And even before then, when he was running for the leadership of the Liberal Party, this is someone who has presented himself as the man for the moment, not necessarily a seasoned veteran politician, but someone who can help steer this economy through a really turbulent period. So it's been his message. It clearly resonated during the last election where he led the Liberals to really a remarkable comeback in the polls. So yes, I think Canadians are hearing that message. Yes, I think it's resonating. And I think having the king and all the pomp and circumstance that comes with this speech from the throne, having it reiterated, I think has only kind of deepened our understanding that, hey, we're venturing out into the unknown and we're trying to rally people, other like-minded countries around us.
Obviously, as we've discussed, the speech didn't have the explicit references to Trump that we might have expected. Has there been any reaction, though, from south of the border?
Surprisingly quiet. You never know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. This is a unique kind of high profile moment for our throne speeches. Usually in Canada, obviously, they get a lot of attention, but, it's mostly tailored towards this domestic consumption. But, you see that it was even on CNN. So I think the Americans are aware of that sentiment. I'm sure they're paying attention. But so far, Donald Trump and Mark Carney seem to have a kind of uneasy friendship. They seem to be respectful of each other. So no blow-ups just yet. But with Donald Trump, that can change in a heartbeat.
Well, I suppose that's the interesting thing, isn't it? In that Mark Carney was pretty strident during the campaign, but since then he seems to have slightly sort of tamed his message and been friendlier to Trump. Presumably this speech plays into that strategy.
Yes, I think there is some more careful, dancing around the issue, the kind of elephant in the room that is Donald Trump. It is that sense that on the campaign trail, obviously, this was topic number one. How do you deal with an unpredictable leader like Donald Trump? But I think Canadians understood that, as heated as the rhetoric was, you can't really afford to cut off the Americans completely. They're our neighbors. They are our closest allies. There's always going to be this strong relationship. So it's more about how do you manage Donald Trump. And when Carney went to visit Donald Trump in the White House, the fact that there was no great big explosion, the fact that he was able to push back on the 51st state comment, but in a way that didn't generate a huge fight, I think was seen as a bit of a victory. So right now he's got, I would say tacit support amongst Canadians to manage Donald Trump, even if he's toned down his rhetoric a bit.
It strikes me that the Canadian government here have tried to use the king to sort of exert Canadian sovereignty, and they want their king to be this symbol of Canadianness and a bulwark to Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the government in London want the king in a British capacity to be a bridge to Donald Trump, and he's the one inviting Donald Trump and being incredibly friendly to Donald Trump in terms of a state visit. How much do London and Ottawa negotiate over what the king says, given he's the same man with two different but joined roles?
Yeah, exactly. Right. He's the King of England and the King of Canada. So what I've been told from our Prime Minister's office is that there is not a negotiation with Downing Street. It's, understanding that the speech from the throne is a reiteration of this government's priorities. So there was some, indication, and the speech was, given to the palace to allow them to vet it, to make sure that it was true to the king's voice because he is the one saying it. But in terms of kind of negotiations with Downing Street, from what I'm told, that didn't really happen. There was an understanding that this is our speech from the throne. Although he is, of course, existing in two different capacities, one man with many roles, there is the understanding that this is our government. These are laying out our priorities. So no kind of formal negotiations between the two sides.
Well, then I suppose Ottawa and London will both hope that the Americans interpret it in the same way. Just in terms of the effect of the visit on Canadians, has it worked to sell the monarchy to younger Canadians who, I presume, are the ones who are less invested in the monarchy, are probably more ambivalent towards it?
It's always this big question. I was suggesting that earlier that we should have a poll gauging Canadians' reaction to the monarchy when there is a royal visit like this, and then kind of having a control experiment later down the line, because it's so tough to read the mood, despite how maybe pessimistic or how much we've soured on the monarchy. When there is a royal visit, the red carpet's rolled out. There is this general excitement. If you see the streets here in Ottawa, if you see the crowds that joined the king wherever he went in Ottawa, there is that genuine, maybe it's not excitement, maybe just curiosity, but there is that, genuine desire to see the king, to hear what he's saying, to be part of that moment in history. So it's tough to gauge if it's effective, if it's a way to kind of, repackage the monarchy. But considering everything we're seeing stateside, I think the king and the royal family almost by default come off as a much better, more appealing image to Canadians who've really soured on the Americans. There's some data showing that our visits to the States across our borders have just plummeted. We're looking for friends everywhere, and the royals seem to be very welcoming.
And just as a final point to, I suppose, review the whole visit, one journalist in the Times, it's written up, described the visit as odd and weird, by way of sort of praise, I suppose. It was, the whole point is that it's odd and it's weird, and it shows Canada's uniqueness. Do you think this visit has worked in Mark Carney's attempt to define Canada's uniqueness and its difference from the United States?
Yeah, when he became prime minister and went off to Rideau Hall and got sworn in with his cabinet back in mid-March, one thing that really struck me about his speech is, he may lack the kind of flowery charisma of Justin Trudeau, but one thing he was really adamant about was just how distinct and unique the institutions, the membership of his cabinet was, and saying it could only happen, could only look like this in this country. So I think that's been a big running theme from Mark Carney's time in office, that Canada is like nowhere else in the world. We are a blend of different cultures, of different traditions, and we exist in this really unique time. Yes, there's a lot of tumultuous stuff happening across the globe, but Canada has, in this weird way, these unique skill sets that really allow us to prosper. So I think in that regard, seeing this kind of blend of our, traditions with the king coming in, then of course, a showcase of some of our, maybe, unique, distinct cultural stylings or unique Indigenous communities or unique Indigenous peoples and the impact that they have, was kind of this great mish together, showing that this is Canada. We are different. Maybe we are odd and bizarre, but there's no place else like this in the globe. So Donald Trump, back off. We don't have that many similarities with the Americans.
Marco Vigliotti, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.